Well, every Wednesday, we call it the big interview here on Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be joined today by Barry Alvarez. He grew up in Pennsylvania, and after high school, he went on to play linebacker at the University of Nebraska for the legendary Bob Devaney. Believe it or not, he started his coaching career at the high school level. And that was over 7 years in Nebraska and later in Iowa, where he won a state championship. Shortly thereafter, Hayden Fry said, come on board at Iowa. And Barry Alvarez spent 8 years there before going to Notre Dame as defensive coordinator under Lou Holtz. They won a national championship. Then the University of Wisconsin job opens up, and I'll let him tell you here in a second. But I think just about everybody and his brother, is safe to say, told him, do not take that job. Do not take it. I mean, he started a program that had not had a winning season since 1984 and had won a total of 7 Big Ten games over 6 years. Well, shortly thereafter, he's playing with all the big boys, and in 1993, he takes the Badgers to their first Rose Bowl since 1963. He wound up winning 3 Rose Bowls as a head coach for the Badgers, multiple Big Ten titles, and later became the athletic director after stepping down. Hell, there's a statue of the guy outside the stadium, and he's still alive. So we welcome in Barry Alvarez. Barry, what do you think when you walk by that statue every day? Seriously, what do you think about that?
I try to look past it, Thom, because there aren't many, as you said, there aren't many guys alive that have a statue. So, it's humbling, but after a while, it's no big deal.
How many people told you not to take that Wisconsin job?
Just about everyone that I leaned on for advice, including Bob Devaney, Coach Holtz. I can remember. I went in and told Lou that I was going to take the job. He says, "Oh no, don't take that job. I can get you a good job."
But you made it into a good job, and I'm curious, Barry, if there are 1 or 2 things that you did when you take over that program, and I just mentioned 7 Big Ten victories over a 6-year span. What are 1 or 2 or 3 or more of philosophies that you brought with you to Wisconsin to get that thing going right from the very beginning?
Well, the first thing, I get that question a lot from particularly young coaches. And, I tell them, first of all, study the job that you're going to take. Take a look and see if you really think, study it and understand. You have to come up with a specific formula that fits that job. Now, I looked at Wisconsin. I'd recruited here. I recruited the Big Ten. I've been in the Big Ten a number of years. And, I looked at the state. I saw most of the players in the state leaving. And, Iowa was going to the Big Ten Rose Bowl that year. They had 11 kids from Wisconsin in the 2 deep. I had the top 2 committed to Notre Dame. Michigan had players, they were all over except at the university. They were getting seconds here. So, I felt if I could keep the best players here, they could play any place. And then you look at the type players you have, and in this case, and then devise a plan. In this case, in Wisconsin, you have big guys, a lot of big people in the state. Maybe not a lot of skilled players, a few, and then you devise your plan on the type of football that you're going to play. And I felt like we can build a physical team, always have good linemen, big linemen, go out and find some backs, and then start from there. Be sound, not beat yourself, and then build a program to compete against Ohio State and Michigan. If you want to win the league, you have to beat those 2 teams because they were dominating the league at the time. And then, I knew that I could put a good staff together, and I had guys that could recruit. You've got to recruit, at first your state, but you got to have people that can recruit. And I think on my first staff, I had what I would consider probably 7 elite recruiters. In our first class, which we only had a month to get, those guys led us to our first Rose Bowl.
I want to go back to when you're coaching in high school. So here you leave as a player at the University of Nebraska. You start your coaching career. You start in Nebraska, off you go to Iowa. I think it was Mason City High School is where you won a state championship. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
That's right.
I got to believe, as we all get older, we look back on moments in our life and you say to yourself, man, that was – I may have had other things that other people perceive as being bigger moments, winning Rose Bowls, etc. But that high school football state championship, I would imagine, Barry, you tell me, has to still stand out for you as one of the best you ever had.
You know what? I said that after our first Rose Bowl. They talked about how great the win was and how I felt about it. And I said, I feel the same way as I did the night when I won a state championship at Mason City, Iowa. It's still about getting a group of players and group of coaches and having a fan base support you and do all those things and beat the very best. And so, yeah, it was a great thrill for me. I was in high school. You said so I was in there 9 years. I was 4 years as an assistant coach in Lincoln before I took my first head coaching job out in a small school out in the middle of the state, Lexington, Nebraska. I was there 2 years, and then Mason City came and recruited me. But yeah, it was a great thrill.
When you go your first season at Wisconsin, I believe you go 1-10 that first year. Did you really feel like things were moving in the right direction? 1-10 ain't easy.
No, that's right. Because as a head coach, you have to walk into the meeting with confidence. You can't be down. I'd come home down, and my wife would get after me.
She can do that now. Cindy can do that with the best of them. She can get after you a little bit.
And she did. But so you have to be upbeat. But I tell you, the time when I knew that I had the players, we had one win. We're going to play Michigan State at Michigan State. Last game of the year. It's cold. It's snowy. Michigan State has a very good team. A typical George Perlis team. It's physical. They're going to a nice bowl game, etc. And our guys played lights out. I mean, we didn't have an offense. Troy Vincent scored on a punt return. That was our only touchdown. But we take it down to the wire. I've got a little receiver, drops about a 5-yard pass that would have won the game. But I told our guys after the game, they played as hard as they could. No one had quit. I told the seniors, I thanked them because they stuck with me and they helped build a foundation that I knew from that point on we were going to be really competitive.
Well, 2 years later, you beat Ohio State. Now,
yeah.
I think everybody agrees that in the Big Ten, and look, for a long time it could have been Ohio State or Michigan, but in more recent years, Ohio State became the gold standard in the league and quite frankly still is today in many, many ways. But when you beat them for the first time, I have to believe not only the guys you had in your locker room, your players, your coaches, great fans. I've always said the best fans in the world, both pro and college, are in Wisconsin. I really believe that. But all of a sudden, other players that maybe you were out there recruiting that are saying, oh, hold on a minute now. Wisconsin just beat Ohio State. Is that fair?
That's fair. You can show progress. You can make promises. When you're recruiting, you have to show kids that they're going to be successful and they're going to go to bowl games. And that's what that game showed them, that we're a new staff. All of us had success wherever we had been. But now you have some tangible proof that you can beat and play with the big boys. And so that helped us a great deal in recruiting. And by the way, the quarterback was Herb Street on that team.
You don't ever remind him of that, do you?
He reminds me.
Does he really?
Sure he does.
That's funny. Of course, he makes his home now here in Cincinnati. His son is a quarterback over at St. Xavier High School on their JV team. And who knows, maybe one day he'll be the starter at St. X. For kids that grew up, and this is so much changing, and we're going to get into this a little bit later on, but for those of us who grew up in the Midwest or on the West Coast, The Rose Bowl was that game when you're sitting in the dead of winter in Ohio and Wisconsin and Indiana and in Michigan and all these places, Pennsylvania, and you're thinking, man, oh man, does that look like one cool place to be, the Rose Bowl. It was the Big Ten champ every year against the Pac-12 champ every year. Do you recall when you walked on the field that first Rose Bowl you coached?
Well, actually, the first time I coached in that game, I was coaching at Iowa. And I can remember walking into the tunnel and walking out, and it actually takes your breath away. It's so beautiful. And if you don't prepare your team, you can be, deep into the first quarter and you say, oh, hell, we're playing a game. It literally takes your breath away. So, and we didn't play very well. I was out there twice as an assistant coach at Iowa, and we didn't play well. But I really studied and I watched what Don James was doing. He was coaching at Washington. He beat us one year, and I went out another year to watch them play. I think they were playing Iowa. And I went out and I watched his practices and I watched what he did, because he had a great plan, and I stole a lot of his ideas in preparation for the bowl game. But you have to take your players to the stadium before the game and show them the stadium. Let them walk around, see how beautiful the atmosphere is. I say it's the most attractive venue in all of sport.
Well, what did you learn from Don James? Because there are a lot of people out there. There's a generation of people out there that don't remember Don James and the program that he put together at Washington. I mean, NFL players all over the place, great college teams, great college programs. What did you learn from him on how to not let the quote-unquote distractions and beauty take away from what you were there to do?
Okay, and I built, I had a pretty good bowl record. At one time, I had the best bowl record in college football. And a lot of it was tapered. The Rose Bowl, when we first went, we went out there on the 17th of December. So did Washington, because neither one of us had indoor facilities. So that's a long time for your players. But now at a regular bowl game, I took a moderation of that plan that Don gave us. And here was the plan. We went out on the 17th, and our schedule was get up at 6:45, have breakfast, then have meetings, hurry up, get to practice. Then right after practice, we'd get dressed and go to Disneyland. Then we'd go to Knott's Berry Farms. Then we go someplace else. Then we go someplace else. And I was watching what Washington was doing. They were out there too. They gave every 4 guys a car. They had no curfew. They practice at 3 in the afternoon. So their guys, guys are going to go out there. They want to have fun. They're going to run. And, 3 in the afternoon, they have their sleep. They're going to practice and then go about their business. Then the week of the game, they're burned out. Now it's time to focus on the game. And you go about it that way. And so that's what I did. I learned that from him. You put your game plan in before you leave campus. So you're practicing your game plan the whole time out there. You let your players have a lot of freedom early in your stay, and as you get closer to the game, you get more and more focused. You have tighter hours and curfews and that type of thing.
One player you recruited, and look, his NFL career, I don't care, and we're not talking about that. But I think now a generation has gone by where a lot of people don't know who Ron Dayne is. When Ron Dayne came into Wisconsin, you're recruiting this kid. Now, he is from the state of New Jersey, Pine Hill, New Jersey. And in 1996, he weighs 270 pounds and is among the fastest, if the not the fastest kid in the state of New Jersey. This guy was unlike anybody the college football world had ever seen. How did you hear about, and then convince Ron Dayne to come from New Jersey to Wisconsin to play football?
By the way, Ohio State was the other school. It came down to us in Ohio State on signing Ron. I had a guy on my staff, Bernie Wyatt, who really was an unbelievable recruiter. And we were together at Iowa, and then I was able to hire him here. but he had tremendous ties and contacts and relationships with high school coaches. We had recruited a number of players from Ron's school. The counselor at the school had, the kids all hung out there. The players all hung out in this counselor's office, and Bernie had a tremendous relationship with him. The guys who we took, and we took some that we took at Iowa, they all came. They had success. They graduated. The ones that didn't play, they still graduated. And the counselor knew we were going to take care of them. We got in on Ron early. I really got to know the family well. Really had built a great relationship with him. And, and a lot of it was the relationship that Bernie had with the counselor, and then the relationship that I built with Ron and his family.
Had you ever seen an athlete like him at his size before? You saw a lot of football players, Coach. This guy had to be among the most unique cats you had ever laid eyes on.
Thom, he came the week before he reported here. He came from the West Coast track meet. It was the state champs from all over the country, and he won the shot and disc. He was 270 pounds. His first day at workouts, my strength coach comes back and said, "That young freshman kid is 270 pounds. He's beating everybody in 10-yard bursts. He's a freak." And I told him, everybody was recruiting him as a fullback. And I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "I want to carry the ball." I said, "You know what? I'll give you that ball. It's not very heavy, and I'll give it to you a bunch, man."
Tell the story you shared with me when we did a couple of those bowl games together about a conversation. I'm not going to remember if it was a bowl game, whether it was a regular season game, or whatever it might be, where you were turning around and handing the ball off to Ron Dayne virtually every play to start a game, and your offensive coordinator says in your ear, "What?" And what was your response?
He said, "What?" I missed the story. Ron was our offense, and he says our tendencies. It was Brad Childress, and he reminds me of this all the time. So we handed to Ron all the way down the field. Now, this is a kid. He's probably 18 years old. We gave him the ball 47 times one week. The next week 49. Next one 51. And so that was our offense. Quarterback didn't throw it very well. And he says, we haven't thrown on first down. Now, we've handed the ball off all the way down the field, and it's first and goal on the 3-yard line. He wants to throw play action. I said, no, you hand it to Ron again. So we score. But the thing with Ron, I'd give it to him so much, and he'd get tired, and he'd pat his helmet to get out of the game. I'd say, no, one more first down.
Is he the greatest player? Ohio State people are going to go off the reservation when I ask you this question because of Archie Griffin, the only player in the history of college football to win back-to-back Heisman trophies. I think the argument can be made. The greatest player in the history of the Big Ten Conference is Ron Dayne.
Yeah, he's right up there. I mean, Archie was obviously one of the best that ever played, if not the best. But we banked our whole offense was Ron Dayne as a true freshman. Mike Samuel was our quarterback. Bless him. He was tough as they came. In crunch time, he could throw a strike, but we relied on him to run the ball. But it was, if we were going to, let's say we had 75 snaps, Ron's going to get close to 50 of them, and everybody knows who's going to get the ball. We had a good line also, but he carried us. He was our offense. And I think, when people today think about Wisconsin football, they think they think it's 3 yards in a cloud of dust, although he ran for more than 3 yards. But they visualize him carrying the ball, and that's our identity. But I don't know if he's the greatest, but I know he's one of the best that's ever come through.
Yeah, just for the record, by the way, in back-to-back Rose Bowl victories, which Barry Alvarez is the only coach in the history of the Big Ten to win back-to-back Rose Bowls. In those 2 Rose Bowl games, Ron Dayne ran for 246 yards in one of them, and in the other one, he ran for an even 200 yards. Why was he never a big star in the NFL, do you think, Coach?
He started out, it was he and Tiki Barber, and they were alternating. They called him Thunder and Lightning. and that team went to the Super Bowl, and he didn't carry the ball one time in the Super Bowl. I don't know. I don't know the answer. He had a great year that year, and he was kind of phased out after that. I never got it explained to me. I don't know. I was at the game. I was baffled that he wasn't playing in the game because he had a very good year, and the two of them together were a tremendous 1-2 package.
2005, you go 10-3, and you walk away. Why?
Oh, you know what? I was doing both jobs, and I had done it for 2 years, and I knew sooner or later. And I told the chancellor that I would do both, and if either one of us felt it was too much, that I'd step away from one or the other. And so I had a young assistant in Brett Bielema that I thought could handle the job, which he did. He did a tremendous job for us, and I just thought it was time. I could keep the program going, and he could run it the same way I did. I could oversee him and help him, help a first-year coach make decisions and help him be successful, and I could run the program. So, I more than anything else, it was, doing both, it just wore on you. You had no time whatsoever.
I'm drawing a blank on the coach, and I just saw the headline today, and they were asking if he was. It was Steve Wojciechowski, basketball coach, was at Marquette there for a while. You know Wojo, and he was let go. And the article, and I'll go back and read the whole thing, but I went through the first couple of paragraphs where he said that he's not in a hurry to get back into coaching. That the guy that was his mentor, Mike Krzyzewski, whom he played for at Duke. And he coached under at Duke for a long, long time before he took that Marquette job. He said, I saw Coach K miss a lot of things in his life that I don't want to miss. You became athletic director, and that was the other job you were talking about. You were the head football coach and the AD at Wisconsin. And look, both of them require a lot of time. Can you even relate to a guy who says something like that? And I don't mean that in a disparaging way at all towards Steve Wojciechowski, not in any way, shape, or form. Everybody's got to do what they think is best for them. But do you think it's safe to say that you really do give up so much of your life in either one of those two roles?
You do. You do. One of the things that really hurt me when I retired, I can remember coming home one time and or us being someplace, and we were around players, and and I always had a great relationship with my players. And my wife coming up and said, "You realize you spend more time with these guys than you do with your son," and that really hurt me. That really bothered me, and I couldn't argue with her. I'm down at the job early in the morning till late at night, traveling together. I was spending more time with them than I was with my own kids, and so. Yeah, I can see that, and particularly if you have young kids. I'd gone through high school, so they were pretty much grown when I got into college coaching. But I can see that. I can see that easily.
Well, you made up, I guess, if there is such a thing, for lost time because you've had a chance to be around your grandkids and actually have them play at Wisconsin. That has to be really cool, or was really cool, right?
That's that was special. My daughter and her husband moved back to Madison when Joe, who is my oldest grandson, I think he was in kindergarten, and then Jake was born, and Jake was just a baby, and so I went to every game they had. And they played. Both of them were three sport guys, from youth football, basketball, junior high school basketball and football. And then both of them coming here, and both of them having good careers here. That was really neat. That was a lot of fun for me. And like last week or 2 weeks ago, I went down and watched Dallas play. Be Jake's first NFL game down in Dallas. That was really cool. Also,
I mean, how cool is that, right? How cool is that?
My buttons were burst.
Did you talk to him before the game? Did you see him, a day or two before the game when you?
We got there the day. We got there about 3. We flew down the day of the game. We spent time after the game. We went back and picked him up and took him back to his condo and spent time with him after the game. But I send him something. We correspond every day. I'll text him or email him every day, and I'll see how things are going. And after the game, I try to encourage him before a game and give him a little critique after the game.
That's got to be a different world, right? I mean, not only the jump from college to pro, but going from a town where he grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. Granddad is there, athletic director, knows a bunch of people, is a good player, playing for a great college football program. But it's still Madison, Wisconsin. It's the state capital. It's a beautiful town, great college campus, big campus. But now you're in Dallas, Texas with the Dallas Cowboys. Any shock value there for him, or he was ready for all that?
No, he was ready. I think, and the thing was impressed with is how Dallas, everything they do, he says is first class. They assign them like a family that has them over for dinner. I know we used to do that in college here and at Iowa. And so they do that. I didn't know the NFL did that, and I'm sure a lot of teams probably don't. But they're assigned a family who basically adopt some of these young players, and it was a really easy adjustment for him because they made it easy for him.
All right, I want to get into some of the stuff going on in college football today. You were an athletic director. You stepped down from that job. And full knowledge and inner workings of the conference and of television and all this kind of stuff going on. I want to start with NIL, and because I don't understand much about it, Coach, but walk me through how it works when some company wants to sponsor Joe Blow. What is exactly the process that has to happen there? Do they have to go through the athletic department? Do they contact some kind of representative for Joe Blow? Is Joe Blow allowed to have a representative because he's an amateur player and not a pro player?
Yeah. The school is supposedly not allowed to make these arrangements. So an individual company can contact the player directly. Most of them will now have representatives. I just read one today where a company is going to commit. I thought he said, if I'm not mistaken, $1 million to a basketball player and a football player, and they're going to represent his company. He's going to give them job. I mean, whoever this, I can't remember where I read this, but whoever it was knew the rules, and actually going to have them represent his business for a fee. And I think this will all level off. I think I'm for everything we can do for our student athletes, but you have to keep it out of recruiting. And you're reading about schools that are flat out going out and you're reading how much money players are getting to commit to a school or go play for a school. We need the NC2A to enforce the law. We have rules, we have guardrails, but they aren't being enforced. And that really has put a lot of college coaches in a bind. They don't know. I sat in with the football coaches several months ago, and they're in a quandary. If other people are doing this, if I do it, I can be fired for cause. What should I do? They're put in a tough spot. So I just think we need the NC2A or someone, or some type of an arrangement where we get our arms around it, manage it, because I think in the long run it's good for the student athletes, and I think things will balance out. They'll work this out. But I think it's great that they can earn some money.
I've thought a lot about just this topic, even though I don't know a ton about it. And the first natural reaction, I think, by most people is, well, this is a win-win-win-win for all the big boys, and Wisconsin being one of them. But, when you start traveling around, say where I went to school in Athens, Ohio, at Ohio University, now there's not a ton of money. It's not a big city by any form or fashion. But it seems like the not-so-big boys, some of their student athletes can stick a few bucks in their pocket from some of the smaller towns or smaller businesses in all these college towns all over the country. Do you think it's such a huge separator from the haves and the quote-unquote have-nots?
I think it can be, but what's the difference? Ohio, you couldn't compete with other Big Ten schools to start with. Now, I think it all balances out, Tom, and I think every community, the businesses are hiring people to advertise. They're hiring talent to advertise for them. I was talking with some people first when this came out, and one of them happened to be from Land's End, which is the place is just south of Madison. I said, Land's End. Let me give you an example. You have a catalog, don't you? A big and tall? Yes. Well, who's bigger and taller than our volleyball, our girls volleyball, or using them as your models? You have to hire somebody. So why not the athletes? So I think there's an opportunity for everybody in every level school.
Then there's the transfer portal. I have Brian Billick on my show twice a week. And he was brought in by Herm Edwards out at Arizona State to be an offensive analyst. Marvin Lewis was the same as a defensive analyst. We know Herm Edwards has been let go just this past weekend. But we were talking about the transfer portal and how maybe more than anything else, Barry, and you've forgotten more about this stuff than I'll ever know, how it has so very much changed the landscape of college athletics.
It's free agency. And what's interesting, I had a good visit with Mel Tucker before the season, one of my former players. And Mel's telling me, having been in the NFL, he's treating this like the NFL treated free agency. Know who's out there, have people assigned, know the ones that can fit into your program, do your homework. And my philosophy has always been, so those are the rules now. You better, instead of complaining about them, you better adapt and you better figure out how to take the best advantage of it. And so I thought Mel really had a very good approach. And let me tell you, Tom, this is what I did, and this is what I told the coaches when I was the athletic director. And when these rules came up, I said, listen, first of all, you recruited all these kids to play for you. You've been in their homes. You know their parents. You know which ones are helicopter parents. You know which ones are pampered. You know which ones are spoiled. You know all those things. You should know all those things before you sign them. And if you can't build a relation, you sign him, you bring him here. If you can't build a relationship where he doesn't want to play for you and doesn't want to please you and build that type of relationship with a player, and he wants to go, then that's on you. That's on you. So don't blame the transfer portal and the rules. That's on you that you haven't built a relationship. And I believe that. We've got a great place here, good school. Academically, it's wonderful, good community. It's up to the coach to build that relationship. And if they're not playing and they're not happy and they have a chance to go someplace else, then so be it. Go find another one.
What about, Coach, the whole process of, and there's oftentimes a lot of talk here in Cincinnati, and it was drummed up again when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to go to LSU. The way he left Cincinnati, and I'm not asking you to comment on the way Brian Kelly left Cincinnati or left Notre Dame, but the bottom line is the way the structure of the system, and we were talking about this before you came on, because a lot of people around here just hammer Brian Kelly regularly for the way he left. But should something be done in college sports that, a team season ends roughly around, depending on who you are, Thanksgiving, maybe the first weekend of December. You're going to make a coaching change. You're a big-time program. You're going after a guy. But to hire the guy, you got to bring him in before his team goes to play in a big bowl game. That happened with Kelly here when they took him to a BCS game for the second time, and then he leaves to go to Notre Dame. Is that something that college football or the NCAA has talked about changing at all?
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard any discussion about that. I think that's where each individual schools builds that into contracts. If someone's going to leave, then you've got to build liquidated damages into that contract where they're going to pay X amount of dollars to the team that to the school he's leaving. And we see all these contracts where guys are making all this money, or if they fire somebody, they're giving them millions of dollars, which drives me crazy. That's just bad business. But you've got to build it both ways. When somebody leaves, that his liquidated damages are substantial enough that that the school can move forward with it.
Big Ten expansion. You're right in the middle of it. You're working alongside the Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren on every single one of these decisions. I'm not going to ask you if you were shocked because you knew about the possibility of it long before any of us did. I'm still shocked, Coach, that USC and UCLA are now going to be in the Big Ten. I can't believe it.
You got to adapt. You got to adapt, Tom.
That's what my wife tells me all the time, for God's sakes.
Yeah, you got to adapt. There's change. Things are changing. It's going to change. I think that, as we've known that, we used to sit back. You talked about it already. We used to sit back and dream about going to the Rose Bowl. Any kid that ever grew up in Big Ten country, that's where he wanted to go. Now it's go to the Final Four. Go play for the championship game. The Rose Bowl doesn't have the luster that it did before. So, things continue to change. So,
do you think this ends up going? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you think this thing ends up just becoming, if it's not there already, two major college football, for sure, football conferences? And maybe, the Big Ten still plucks away at a couple of other places here and there, or the SEC does the same thing. Do you think we can continue to see expansion in those two conferences especially?
I think things are moving in that direction. I think there's been I think somehow you have to get your arms around college football and basketball. Quite frankly, for the school, the major colleges, football is paying all the bills, and so to follow the same rules for all the different levels is difficult. So I think we're moving in that direction where you have supervision. Football kind of goes off to its own and is managed differently.
What's a danger of that in and of itself? If there is one thing that would be a negative to that, of having almost a different body, if you will, rather than the NCAA running college football? Or is there one?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. I know if we keep going the direction we are, your varsity sports, your Olympic sports, I think they may be in danger. Schools funding them. If you're pumping all your money in one direction to football and basketball, your two money makers, then somehow you've got to pay for everything. So that's what would concern me, and because I still believe in a broad-based program where you support. Colleges have in the Big Ten. I think we average 24 sports. And I'd sure hate to lose that.
One of the reasons I had asked you to be on this week is because this coming Saturday, the Wisconsin Badgers take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Your thoughts about this game? It's in Columbus. These are two of the powerhouse programs. Certainly, it's been the best program in one side of the conference in Wisconsin against the best program on the other side of the conference in Ohio State. What are your thoughts looking at this game?
Yeah, what I'm really impressed with Ryan Day and what Ohio State has done recruiting-wise. I think they've Except for last year when Michigan beat them, they've been so dominant. And all you have to do is look at the draft and see the number of people, number of their players are taken very early, first round in the draft, et cetera. How many 5-star recruits they sign every year. Their recruiting is so much superior to me. It's allowed them to separate from the league, and their record, backs that up. So I'm impressed with that. I'm very impressed with the job that they've done. For us to have a chance, we can't beat ourselves. You've got to, you've got to control them. Can't give them a lot of home runs, big plays, and try to shorten the game. Try to shorten the game with ball control and that type thing, and get a few breaks.
Well, I think Notre Dame did that in the season opener. I was at that game, and Notre Dame, they played right there and had a chance in the third quarter to win that thing. In the fourth quarter, Ohio State's ground game started to crank it up a little bit more. Does Jim Leonhard, your defensive coordinator, does he come to you and say, "Hey, Coach, I might need a little help this week. We're playing a bunch of guys that are going to the NFL in a year from now"?
No, Jimmy's doing fine on his own. He's a great one. He really is. He's a wonderful story, a little walk-on. I remember he came, I didn't even know who he was, and he came to our summer camp, and we were timing 40s, and he went by me. I heard him, I heard the wind. I said, "Who's that little guy?" And we got him to walk on, and after about the third day of practice, I can remember telling the secondary coach, "See that little guy down there? You get him up here with the 1s and 2s. The guy says, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Have you watched practice? Same practice I watch. Every ball is thrown. His hands are on it, or he intercepts it. He's around the ball. Get him up here." And people don't know. Besides being an All Big Ten player, he led when he left. He had the most punt return yardage of anyone ever in the Big Ten. So he knows. He's very smart. He understands the game. Every NFL team that he played for, he was the quarterback of the defense. He understood it. Well, he's special. He really is.
Well, Coach,
he doesn't need any of mine.
Yes, he does. Everybody needs your help. If they're not picking your brain, then something's wrong. Well, Barry, look, give Cindy our love, the kids and the grandkids. I'm going to have her on one of these days, because she's got about as much fire as anybody I've ever been around. But it's funny. I was thinking the other day they had that 15th anniversary of two games, the Michigan-Appalachian State game, which I had a chance to call, but then the 15th anniversary of the game that you and I did together, which was Boise State and Oklahoma. I still, when they run some of those highlights, I just get goosebumps about us being in that stadium that night for that game.
It was unbelievable. And I'm good friends with Bob Stoops. Is like one of my sons, to watch that and, be close to it because of knowing him, but to see what Boise did. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the quarterback is the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Boise quarterback.
Yeah.
Boise quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was unbelievable. That was a great. I tell people that all the time. What a great game! What an experience!
That was so much fun. And so, Barry, all the best. God bless you, my friend. Thank you for your time today. I know you're off doing a bunch of business with the Big Ten and Commissioner Warren, and continued success. And thank you for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
You bet, Tom. I need to talk to you. Give me a call when you're free.
I will do it. Okay. Barry Alvarez, kind enough to join us on the big interview today. I'm telling you, talk about a Hall of Fame guy, man. I was so intimidated. What had happened was Barry was still he had just retired from coaching and was the athletic director, but was when you walk into a room, and every year they have this big coaches function in New York City, and Fox had sent me there to meet Barry Alvarez. We were going to be doing both the Fiesta Bowl, which was the Oklahoma-Boise State game, and then the national championship game a week later, which that year was Ohio State against Florida. And I remember just being so intimidated because watching that guy on TV, for those of you old enough to remember, I mean, You talk about tough and just, I mean, even now, you just look at him. I mean, and what a beautiful, beautiful guy. And the reverence that people have for him in college football. And look, we're in a day and age now where it's, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley and Nick Saban and all these guys. I'm telling you, in the history of college football, Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, going way back, Barry Switzer and Bud Wilkinson, nobody did more for a single school than Barry Alvarez did for the University of Wisconsin. You heard him say it. Lou Holtz looked him in the eye and said, do not take that job. It's a dead-end street. Dead-end street. Barry Alvarez took that job, and now that is one of the top 15 college football programs in the country. In some cases, top 10. It's a big-time job at a big-time school at a great town. If you ever go to Madison, Wisconsin, have a chance, you got to go. Surrounded on both sides. You got the state capitol. You got water on both sides and a little drive that has water on both sides. It takes you into the campus. It is an awesome place. And Camp Randall is a big league place to watch a football game. Although Barry knows it and I know it. The Badgers are in big trouble Saturday. 7:30 p. Columbus, Ohio. Whew. Place is going to be jumping. Bucks are getting it rolling. All right, we're going to talk about a couple of other things with Casey and Brandon before we wrap up the show today. It's Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, and thanks to Barry Alvarez. Hope you enjoyed it.